Welcome to Jackie's Craft Table. Hello everyone, thanks for joining me. In this video, I'm creating some fun birthday shaker cards using some products from Arteza. So I have their big roll of foam tape, and I am really loving this stuff. And I have some of their chunky glitter. These first two are called Mermaid Rain and Electra. There are a lot of different sizes of glitter in each container. In the second box, you get some beautiful purple glitter, and this one's called Fairy Dust, and that one is called Moonstone. Arteza also has other glitters over on their website, but I just love this chunky glitter. So to make the birthday cards, I'm going to use the stamp set that's been sitting on my desk for a while. It's from Simon Says Stamp, and it's called Big Birthday Greetings, and I also have the coordinating dies. So for card number 1, I'm going to use this balloon die. I used it to cut out several balloons in this piece of purple cardstock that you see. I also cut out a few yellow balloons. And on this purple panel that I have in my mini MISTI, I'm going to stamp out my birthday greeting. And this is just a little sentiment that says happy birthday. It's the only sentiment from this set that would fit on this panel. Most of the card is going to be covered up with shaker balloons. My next step is to adhere some acetate on the back of this purple panel. There's a piece of tracing paper on the back of this acetate, and I just left it on so that it'd be easy to see on the video. I'm using some liquid adhesive to attach this onto the purple panel. I didn't put very much liquid glue on, but I'm just kind of pressing that into place. And now I can peel off the tracing paper. And now to build up my shaker wells. I'm really loving this foam tape. There's a lot on this roll. There's 36 yards. I want the wells to be really tall so that the shaker pieces can really move around. So I'm doubling it up. And I just fold it back over itself. I'm trying to get it as even as I can. I'm going to have to fit these into very narrow places, so I'm going to cut this down a little bit. I took off the release paper before I'm adding it to this panel. It's a lot easier to manipulate it around these balloon windows when the release paper is off. I'm putting on enough foam tape so that my whole panel is an even height. And now for the fun part. I'm going to put the chunky glitter in my shaker wells. I didn't have a small spoon, so I'm just using a piece of stiff cardstock that I bent at the edge. This works just as well. I'm using 3 of the 4 chunky glitters that I have, and I'm trying to be careful not to get it on the foam tape. And then once I have all of the windows filled, I'm going to add a piece of paper on top of this. And I'm pressing it down well just so it sticks. I don't want any of the chunky glitter to escape. Now I can flip it over and trim off the overhang with a pair of long, sharp scissors. Once I have that trimmed down, I'm going to add it to my card base. And I have already attached a piece of purple pattern paper on my card base. And this shaker element is going to be just a little bit smaller. I just want to center that. The glue gives me a little bit of wiggle time. And next, I'm going to pull out a Copic multi-liner because I want to add just little strings to these balloons and little bows. Very easy to do by hand. You could always draw them in first with a pencil and then ink it up after. And then for an added pop of color, I'm going to use these yellow balloons and adhere them to my card. I love purple and yellow, the complementary colors. And then I'm just adding the strings around these yellow balloons. And that's it for card number 1. I just love all of the sparkle and shine. These are just so much fun to hand out to family and friends. I'll give it a little shake here so you can see it in action. On my next shaker card, I'm going to be stamping my sentiment right onto the acetate. So I have my acetate in my Mini Misty, and I kept the tracing paper on the back so you could kind of see it better. I'm using some Stays On ink. I don't use this very often, but it's a fun product to use on your acetate. And I do stamp it up a few times. This ink smells so good. It smells like almonds, sugared almonds or something. It has a very sweet smell to it. This is going to be more of a masculine shaker card. I went ahead and cut up some strips of paper. This is a great way to use up some of your scrap paper. And I'm using all blue tones. I'm adhering these down around my sentiment with liquid glue. I'm just eyeballing it, doing my best to get them straight. This was a really fun process to do. And it was a pretty fast shaker card to put together. I'm also using a faux stitched frame to put around my sentiment. I'm adhering this on top. And then once this dries, I can go ahead and cut off the excess or the overhang. But I want to give that a chance to dry first, so it doesn't shift while I do this next step. A pair of long, sharp scissors like these is a really handy tool to have in your craft room. And now for the foam tape. I'm going to double up on this again for this card. Because I'm just putting it down in straight lines. And I don't need to take off the release paper because I don't need to mold it around anything. But I am going to put an even amount of foam on this panel, just so it doesn't flatten out when you mail it to someone or sag. I want to make sure that the corners of the foam tape all touch so that none of the chunky glitter can escape. I'm putting it behind all of the strips of paper that I put on the front of the card because I want the happy and the birthday to have two different colors of the glitter. Now I can pull off the release paper and start adding my glitter. I'm going to use Moonstone at the top, and then Electra at the bottom. And I'm going to capture that again with a piece of white cardstock and press it really well into place. You can try adding it directly to your card base, but I never succeed at this, so I always just capture it with another piece of cardstock. Now I can adhere it to my card base. I created this card base with some blue cardstock. And that's all there is to card number 2, but I just think it looks stunning. The static electricity causes the glitter to stick to the acetate. I like this effect, but if you wanted it to shake a little bit more, you could use your anti-static powder first around your shaker window. On card number 3, I'm using a sentiment die as my shaker window. I'm cutting it out with this pale blue piece of paper. And I'm going to keep all of the little letters because at the end I'm going to put in the inner pieces of the P's and the A's and so forth. So I'm just going to set those aside. I'm using a craft pick to poke out the letters. Just look how cute that looks. I have my card base all ready to go. I already chose a piece of patterned paper to adhere to this. And now I'm going to cut down my sentiment. I'm just using my ruler and my Fiskars paper trimmer to do this. I want it to be the same angle as the angles of the stripes on my card. My next step will be to add the acetate. I'm not putting a lot of liquid glue because I don't want it to ooze in between the letters. And then I can just stick that down. I'm going to allow it to dry for a minute before I trim it down. I'm being very careful not to cut into my cardstock. And now I can take off the tracing paper. I need another very narrow shaker well for this card. However, this time I'm not doubling up on the foam tape. I'm just using a single layer. And with this chunky glitter, it works just fine. It still has plenty of room to shake, I've discovered with making this card. When you're creating shaker cards with cupped sequins, they have a bit of dimension to them. So 2 layers of foam tape really help the shaker bits to move around nicely. I'm using more of the Electra chunky glitter, and I'm going to use a lot this time. This time I'm going to use a piece of very pale gray cardstock behind my shaker element. There, that looks so pretty, and now I can trim off the excess. I'm using more liquid glue to attach this shaker element onto my card base. And I want it to be parallel to the stripes on my card. And again, the liquid glue gives you a little bit of wiggle room so that you can just adhere it down perfectly. I'm going to use the candle dye to add a little bit more to this card. The yellow just adds a nice pop of color. I'm gluing those flat down onto the card. I'm also going to stamp out another sentiment, and this is another teeny tiny sentiment from this stamp set that I'm using in this video. But first I'm going to pop it in my mini Misty. I don't want to misstamp and mess up this card after all this work. I'm using my VersaFine Onyx Black ink. It says, "Time to eat cake." Next, I'm adding the centers of the letters. You don't have to do this step, but I just wanted to try it. This looks a little more complete, and that finishes off card number 3. I hope that you'll give these fun techniques a try and create some beautiful shaker cards of your own. A big thanks to Arteza for sending me these beautiful supplies. I'm having a lot of fun working with their art mediums and their card making supplies. I have the links to these products below and over at my blog. Thanks for watching, everyone. I hope that you get the time to do something crafty today. I'll be back with another video really soon. Bye!